Lucinda, a bashful young girl, starts school in 1959. It's time to have some fun, but she's not with the other youngsters. She informs them that the first day of school is marked by a contest in which pupils depict what they believe will happen in the future. Lucinda Embry, on the other hand, is instructed to write a sequence of numerals on her notepad by whispered noises. The task is done before she can write down the final figures. The pieces have been placed in a time capsule, which will be uncovered in 50 years. When William Dawes Elementary School reopens the following day, the director welcomes everyone and informs them where the time capsule will be buried. Their children and grandchildren will discover this time capsule in 50 years. Miss Taylor notices that Lucinda is no longer at the location where the time capsule was buried. Teachers and staff begin to yell her name and search for her around the school. Miss Taylor descends a flight of stairs and hears a disturbance from behind a closed door. She sees Lucinda, who is afraid and has blood on her hands. As she opens the door, she had scrawled something on the door with her fingernails. This is the final set of digits she failed to record the day before. She is terrified. Time jumps 50 years to the present. John, an astronomer, is having difficulty getting over his wife's death. After his wife perished in a fire, he finds it difficult to think that life has any meaning. Caleb, his son, is likewise struggling to move on. The following morning, the current director of Caleb's school announces that the time capsule, which was buried 50 years ago, will be exposed to the public. Miss Taylor, the same teacher from 50 years ago, is asked to perform the honors. Each child receives an envelope when the box is opened. When Caleb receives Lucinda's letter, he sees numbers instead of images, like everyone else does. As he reads the paper, he begins to hear whispering from all around him and notices a person standing far from the school. But when he looks again, the figure has vanished. Caleb attempts to seek permission from his parents to spend the night at a friend's house. While they are conversing, his father notices the school paper and inquires about it. He wasn't supposed to bring it home. When Caleb is in bed, John begins to think about the list of numbers. By accident, he places a whiskey glass on top of it, forming a circle around some numbers. He draws some numbers on a whiteboard and instantly realizes that these numbers refer to September 11, 2001, when the Twin Towers in New York City were attacked, killing 2,996 people. These numbers are ideal for this day. He is certain that this is an accident, so he writes all of the numbers on a whiteboard and investigates further. He notices that many of the items on the list are identical: dates, years, and the number of people killed in tragic occurrences, such as explosions, collisions, earthquakes, and storms. So the following day, John discusses the statistics on the paper with a colleague, Phil. He claims that each set of figures matches a major accident in terms of when it occurred and how many people died, and that the figures have always been correct. Even the day his wife died was included in the figures. John informs him that there are 3 sets of numbers that have yet to occur, one of which predicts that 81 people will die someplace tomorrow. Phil doesn't believe it since it seems too unbelievable to be real. He also believes that the numbers are random since there are numbers on the page that aren't highlighted and don't seem to represent anything. He suspects that someone is making fun of John. John begins to seek further information. He visits Lucinda's former teacher, Miss Taylor, who taught her when the time capsule was buried in 1959. He wants to be certain that the letter is genuine. Miss Taylor claims this is the original and tells John about Lucinda scratching on the door after the capsule was buried and the weird events that followed. John expresses a desire to see Lucinda. However, she died in a drug-related accident a few years ago. He is at home, attempting to call people, when he notices a vehicle with 2 unusual men come up to the yard. When Caleb approaches the vehicle, the mysterious men give him a rock without saying anything. This, of course, frightens John. He instructs him not to approach strangers and sends him back inside. His sister Grace woke him up when he was searching the internet for information regarding Lucinda's death. Grace suggests that John see his family since he hasn't spoken to his father in a long time, but he declines. John has a difficult relationship with his parents since they are very religious and he does not believe in God. The following day, John gets stopped in traffic on his way to pick up Caleb from school. He attempts to alter his path, but there are no other options. When he looks at the coordinates on his GPS, he learns that the uncircled numbers on the list that he couldn't figure out earlier are really the locations of all the sites where the tragedies would occur, and he is exactly where they will occur. He gets out of his automobile to see what's obstructing the road. What he predicted would happen happened when he was speaking with the officers. While attempting to assist after an airliner crashed, numerous individuals were burned and perished. He returns home, still unsure whether what had occurred was true. When John looks up the incident online, he discovers that 81 people were killed. At night, a mysterious stranger enters Caleb's chamber. When Caleb awakens, the stranger gives him a vision of everything being destroyed and the animals fleeing for their lives. Caleb is screaming. His father enters and pulls him up off the floor. John is supporting him when he notices a weird stranger outside the window. He rushes outside to look for the guy, but he's gone. The following morning, he meets the lady in the museum, where they both introduce themselves. She is Lucinda's daughter, Diana. After that, John informed her that he had been following her to find out where her mother was. Diana becomes enraged when Lucinda's name is mentioned. Lucinda's prophecies had come true, according to John, and there were just 2 remaining. The last one will take place on October 19, 3 days from now, and 33 individuals will perish. He needs her support. Diana and her daughter Abby, however, depart, informing him she is unable to assist. Back home, there have been reports of potential terrorist attacks. John utilizes GPS data to predict where the next calamity will occur. He locates the location, which is a railway station, and attempts to inform the police. John runs all the way to the subway station and pursues a guy he suspects of being a terrorist onto the train. The police are keeping an eye on them. They discover that the guy is simply a minor CD thief. When the train begins to move, everyone sees a damaged train approaching them. As everyone rushes to exit the train, mayhem ensues. Again, the fact that the train kills a large number of people supports what was mentioned. In the next scene, John and the other survivors emerge from the debris, and the police and fire department attempt to assist. Diana and her son are waiting for him when he returns home. She then informs John that the last calamity on the list will occur on October 19, the exact day Lucinda said she would die. Diana didn't want to speak to him about it, because she didn't want to know when someone was going to die. Diana decides to take John to Lucinda's old home, an ancient deserted structure where Diana's mother used to hide from everyone. As they pull up the list, they see that the final digits following the date October 19 were the letters E and E reversed, which they believe are the initials of a name. At home, John goes into Lucinda's chamber, where they discover that the EE in the previous prognosis signifies that everyone will die. He also discovers a plethora of these black stones, the same as the one Caleb obtained, around the home. Caleb and Abby are waiting outside in the vehicle for them. They start hearing voices and seeing odd shapes. The voices have summoned them. Caleb begs for assistance with the vehicle horn when Abby is nearly stolen. The visitors had vanished by the time John and Diana arrived. When John notices them, he chases after one of them. He asked the guy what he wanted when he eventually caught up with him. When the guy opened his lips, a large, dazzling light emitted from them, and the man vanished. They can't believe her mother said everyone will die the following day, and that this may be their final night together when they go back to John's home. The following morning, as John wakes up, he finds Abby's image. He immediately realizes that the sun may have had anything to do with the previous calamity. John believes that the final sentence, which is for tomorrow, is consistent with his research on super flares from the sun destroying the rest of the solar system. He hurries to the telescope to check the latest solar measurements, which reveal that the sun is emitting more energy than normal. He believes that a large solar flare is imminent, which might spell the end of the planet. Back at John's home, they prepare to hide in a cave where Diana used to play as a child. It's time to go. He decides to summon Caleb, but when he arrives, he finds him at his desk, drafting a list similar to Lucinda's. He believes what Lucinda wrote on the door 50 years ago was significant to the previous prophecy because of what Caleb was writing. So they return to the school. He removes the door, brings it home, and begins to study the writing on it. Diana wants to go to the caverns before the world ends, so she grabs the kids and drives there. When John finally retrieves the numbers from the door, he believes that here is where they will be able to withstand the tragedy. But when he emerges, everyone is fled, forcing him to pursue them from behind. Diana stops at a gas station to fill up her tank. She overhears the authorities warn that danger is on the way and that everyone should go underground if possible. Diana calls John and informs him where they are. According to John, the safe haven may be in Lucinda's old home, but she is afraid and refuses to go there. While she is still on the phone, strangers take her vehicle with her children inside. She also takes a vehicle and attempts to pursue them, but she is thwarted by a half-truck. She breaks her neck and dies in front of John at 12:01 a.m., precisely as her mother predicted. John travels to Lucinda's old home, following a car-worn path through the woods. He discovers a lot of those black stones there. When he spots one of the odd men, he threatens to shoot him. Caleb interrupts him and informs his father that the aliens have been watching them the whole time and that they must accompany them in order to be rescued. It turns out they were the ones who sent the notifications about the major calamities. They were attempting to prevent the planet from being completely destroyed. Then they revealed an arc in the sky. John is speechless. It's time to go, but the strangers won't allow anybody except the kids to accompany them. Only those picked may go. Caleb is depressed. Caleb and his father say their last goodbyes. The men's bodies begin to gleam, and the ark begins to move. Many of these arks have landed in different regions of the earth and are currently on their way. John wakes up on the ground. He makes his way through the bustling metropolis to his family's house. When his sister embraces him, he embraces his father, then his mother, and finally his sister. As the solar flare begins to demolish everything, it captures them in a group embrace and destroys them as well. At the conclusion of the film, the ark transports the children to various locations and departs. Caleb and Abby sprint across the field toward a large tree.